have you all today. So far, 3 for 3, beautiful weather every time we've had one of these drive-ins. So whoever's praying for it, we appreciate it. Thank you guys so much. Happy Memorial Day weekend to you all. It's great to be able to be here with everybody. We're going to start off today with America the Beautiful.
For spacious skies, for amber ways of grain, for purple mountains' majesty above the fruited plain. America, America, God shed His grace on thee and crowned thy good with brotherhood from sea to shining sea. Oh, beautiful for pilgrim feet whose stern impassioned stress a thoroughfare for freedom beat across the wilderness. America, America, God mend thine every flaw, confirm thy soul in self-control, thy liberty in law. Oh, beautiful for patriot's dream that sees beyond the years, thine alabaster cities gleam undimmed by human tears. America, America, God shed His grace on thee and crown thy good with brotherhood from sea to shining sea.
Memorial Day is a super special day because it's a day all about sacrifice. It's all about sacrifice. That's what we're looking back for. We have Veterans Day to honor those that have served, and we have Memorial Day to honor those that have given everything. They have given their lives. And so it's important for us to be able to focus on this idea of sacrifice. And Jesus, He sets the ultimate example for us in sacrifice, in being willing to go to the cross and giving Himself for you and for me. And so sacrifice is an important part of us here in our country, being in America, and it's important as Christians as well. Sacrifice has deep meaning to both our country and to us in our religion and our belief of Jesus Christ, because in both places it has been exemplified in such great ways. And because of our sacrifice of those that have served, and because of the sacrifice of our Savior, we have such great freedom. And so I am happy to be able to celebrate Memorial Day with you all today. If you would go to our second song, we are going to be singing Open the Eyes of My Heart.
I want to see want to see you.
Open the eyes of my heart.
Open the eyes of my heart, Lord. Open the eyes of my heart. I want to see you. I want to see you. Open the eyes of my heart, Lord. Open the eyes of my heart. I want to see you. I want to see you high and lifted up, shining in the light of your glory. Pour out your power and love as we sing, holy, holy, holy. High and lifted up, shining in the light of your glory. Pour out your power and love as we sing, holy, holy, holy. Holy, holy, holy. Holy, holy, holy. Holy, holy, holy. I want to see you. Holy, holy, holy. Holy, holy, holy. Holy, holy, holy. I want to see you. Holy, holy, holy. Holy, holy, holy. Holy, holy, holy. I want to see you. You are here, moving in our midst. I worship you. I worship you. You are here, working in this place. I worship you. I worship you.
You are here.
You are here, moving in our midst. I worship you. I worship you. You are here, working in this place. I worship you. I worship you. You are waymaker, miracle worker, promise keeper, light in the darkness. My God, that is who you are. You are waymaker, miracle worker, promise keeper, light in the darkness. My God, that is who you are. You are here, touching every heart. I worship you. I worship you. You are here, healing every heart. I worship you. I worship you. Turning lives around. I worship you. I worship you. You are here, mending every heart. I worship you. I worship you. You are waymaker, miracle worker, promise keeper, light in the darkness. My God, that is who you are. You are waymaker, miracle worker, promise keeper, stop, you never stop working. You never stop working. Even when I don't see it, you're working. Even when I don't feel it, you're working. You never stop working. You never stop working. Waymaker, miracle worker, promise keeper, light in the darkness. My God, that is who you are. You are waymaker, miracle worker, promise keeper, light in the darkness. My God, that is who you are. 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 You have been good. You have been faithful to all generations. Oh Lord, your steadfast love and tender mercy have been our salvation. Oh Lord, you have been good. You have been faithful to all generations. Oh Lord, your steadfast love and tender mercy have been our salvation. For by your hand we have been fed, and by your Spirit we have been led. Oh Lord, you have been good. You have been faithful through all generations. For by your hand we have been fed, and by your Spirit we have been led. Oh Lord, Almighty God, Father unchanging, upright and holy. Oh Lord, you have been good. You have been faithful. You have been good.
Father God, we thank you so much for bringing us here today. We thank you for those that were able to come. We thank you for the freedom we have to be able to gather together in this way, God. We do thank you for the beautiful day you've given us. We thank you for the sacrifice that you've set in your Son. And also we thank you for the sacrifice that so many men and women have made here in this country, making sure that we have the freedom that we have here, God. We are so thankful. We are so blessed. We are so undeserving of all that we have here in this country, God. But we are very thankful. We love you. In Jesus' name, amen. I would like to begin by reading John 15, 9 through 17. As the Father has loved me, so have I loved you. Abide in my love. If you keep my commandments, you will abide in my love, just as I have kept my Father's commandments and abide in his love. These things I have spoken to you, that my joy may be in you, and that your joy may be full. This is my commandment, that you love one another as I have loved you. Greater love has no one than this, that someone lay down his life for his friends. You are my friends if you do what I command. No longer do I call you servants, for the servant does not know what his master is doing, but I have called you friends. For all that I have heard from my Father, I have made known to you. You did not choose me, but I chose you, and appointed you that you should go and bear fruit, and that your fruit should abide, so that whatever you ask the Father in my name, he may give it to you. These things I command you, so that you will love one another. It's such a fitting passage for Memorial Day. The fact that there is no greater love than the fact that someone would lay down their life for someone else. And so many of our men and women have done that for our freedom here. And it also points to the death, burial, and resurrection of Jesus Christ. And that is why we are here today, to celebrate. And so I want to ask you guys a question. Have you ever needed help and no one showed up? Have you ever needed help with something and no one showed up? I can tell you, I went to a whole bunch of different schools. In high school, I went to 3 different schools in 4 years. 3 different schools in 4 years. And so the second school that I was at in high school, I remember being there with one of my friends, Saeed. And Saeed was a Muslim. And I remember we were there, we were waiting for gym class, and me and Saeed were sitting there, and we're getting ready to go into gym class, and so we're doing what any 10th grade guys do. We're just goofing off and having fun, waiting in line. All of a sudden, out of nowhere, this guy comes up, and he starts being an absolute monster to my friend. He's sitting there and he's just saying all these terrible things. And have you ever heard somebody say something so terrible that you don't even know what to do? You're trying to catch words because you're like, is this happening? And so that's happening to me. I'm watching this and I'm thinking, is this real life? Am I in a dream? Is this a TV show? Because he was there and he was making fun of Saeed and he was calling him all these names because he was Muslim and he was making fun of him and everything. And while I'm still just dumbfounded looking at this guy like, what kind of cartoon character bully are you? All of a sudden, my friend Moo comes out of nowhere. And he knew me and Saeed. He was friends with both of us. We didn't even see him. He just sees this guy making fun of Saeed and being rude to both of us. And this guy was getting a little aggressive. And now you see me now and you're thinking, Ben, why would anyone want to mess with you? No one could even pick you up. You're a rather large person. Yes, this is true. But in high school, that was not the case. And that was not the case. I was a much smaller person in high school. I have photo evidence if you don't believe me. So you can see that sometime. And so I'm not going to be able to do anything. This guy, he's sitting here and he's picking on us. Moo, all of a sudden, he comes up and he steps over. And it's different for him because no one messed with Moo. He did boxing outside of school. Like he was all involved in it. He was working to do things in boxing and he just had this reputation that no one messed with Moo. And so this guy, he's giving me and Saeed problems. And all of a sudden, Moo comes over and the whole atmosphere changes. All of a sudden, he wants to be friends because Moo looks at him and he's like, hey man, I hear what you're saying. He's like, these are my friends. You got a problem with them. You got a problem with me. And the guy was like, whoa, I don't have a problem with you. He's like, well, if we have a problem, we can handle this right now. And the guy's like, no, we're good. I was just talking to these guys. I'm going to leave now. Moo was like, yeah, you are. You're not going to be here anymore. You move. And so that guy walked away, literally never messed with us ever again. For the rest of the time I was at that school, never had a problem with him. Because Moo stepped in and he had a reputation. He had a reputation for being able to handle these kind of situations. And no one wanted to mess with Moo. And so in that moment, man, it was great to see Moo come along. When you needed help and it was a situation that you can't handle yourself, it was great to have someone step in and be able to handle that for you. I didn't have to do anything. But you know, in life, it doesn't always work out that way, does it? We've all been in situations where we needed help and we look around and there's nobody. There's no one there to help you. Or worse, has this ever happened to you? You're in a situation like that where you need help and you look around and people that you know and that you respect and that you thought were with you, they're not doing anything to help. You're like, this is the moment I needed you. And you look around and they do one of these numbers. They don't want to make eye contact because what they're telling you is, I can't help you here. I can't help you here. And maybe that's you. Maybe you've needed help. And the people that you thought would be able to be there for you, they weren't. Maybe it was friends that you had. And in the moment that you needed them the most, they proved themselves unworthy of being a friend. They weren't there for you. You had something that they could have helped you with and they just didn't. They weren't there. Maybe it's even more serious than that, and it's family. You ever have a family member, someone you love and you trust, and you thought they would be there for you no matter what? And in that moment you need them, you're like, my family didn't show up for this? What? My family? If they don't come, who's going to help? And when you have something like that, if it's a parent or if it's a spouse, it's someone that you put all of your trust in and all your love into, and then in that moment you need them the most, they're not around, it breaks your heart, doesn't it? Amen. It makes you feel like maybe you weren't worth it. And if those people weren't going to help, maybe no one would. And it starts to feel that way. I've had that in my life where someone I loved and I trusted with everything that I had, they did something in such a way that it just broke my heart. It hurt so badly. And those are the kind of things that you carry around. And if we're not careful, what we can do is we can carry that and we can bring it when we come to God. Because we've never known anything like God before. And so we bring our human relationships into our relationship with God, and we start to see Him the way we see other people. I've talked to people before that have had bad fathers or no father. And these people have a hard time because the Bible talks about God as a father. And if you didn't have a good father, and then you hear God is my father, what do? You take that image in your head of the father you have, and you project it onto God. And so I know people that for years have had to deal with that. That when they see God, what they see is they see their earthly father. And that father has treated them so poorly, they don't understand how God can be so different. Because they've never experienced a kind of love like that. I think a lot of us do that when it comes to God. Because people have let us down, because friends or best friends or a spouse or siblings or whatever it is, parents, when they let you down, you bring that to God. Because if these people who I loved the most, who I trusted the most, would break my heart like this, maybe everything and everyone does. And so we start to project that onto God. We start to project that, and we lose this idea of trust in not only people, but also in God. And I want to tell you today that God always stands up for the hurting. Just like I had a friend, Moo, who stepped in to do something, God always steps up. Because Moo wasn't always around, right? It's not like I could use him right now. He's not always around, but God is. And as we outline something, we're going to go through, we're going to be in Genesis, starting in Genesis chapter 12. We're going to look at the life of Hagar. We're going to look at the life of Hagar, somebody that it looks like has been completely abandoned. And then we see God's faithfulness throughout her entire story. And it's a good reminder for all of us that when we feel we have been abandoned, whether it's by friends or family, or maybe even we feel abandoned by God, the situation we find ourselves in, the circumstances are so big and so large, we feel God must have separated himself from us, or we wouldn't be walking through this. And that's something Hagar would be able to understand. Turn with me to Genesis 12. Genesis chapter 12. We're going to be moving around Genesis a little bit as we follow the story of Hagar. But Genesis chapter 12, starting in verse 1 through 3, it says, "Now the Lord said to Abram, from your country and your kindred and your father's house to the land that I will show you, and I will make a great nation of you, and I will bless you and make your name great, so that you will be a blessing. I will bless those who bless you, and him who dishonors you I will curse. And in you all the families of the earth shall be blessed." That's a lot of blessing, isn't it? This is the part of the story we all know real well. This is the part most of us know pretty well. God comes to Abraham, he says, I'm going to use you to bless the entire world. There's only one problem. He says, I'm going to make you a great nation. But when he says that, at that time, Abram had no children. So Abram's going, you're going to what? Because what God just said is your family for generations after generations is going to be used to bless the entire earth. And Abram's like, yeah, there's just me. I'm married, but we don't have any kids, so how's this going to happen? And so this sets into play what we're going to be seeing, and it brings Hagar into this story in a terrible way. It brings it in a terrible way. There's this problem that he needs a child to have an offspring to be able to fulfill this promise. And so then we meet Hagar. And maybe this is somewhere for some of you've never heard this before, but Genesis chapter 12, verses 10 through 20. It says, now there was a famine in the land. I think it's interesting that Hagar's story right here begins with something horrible. It starts this way, okay? There's a famine in the land. So Abram went down to Egypt to sojourn there, for the famine was severe in the land. When he was about to enter Egypt, he said to Sarai, his wife, I know that you are a woman beautiful in appearance, and when the Egyptians see you, they will say that it may go well with me because of you, and that my life may be spared for you. Say that you are my sister. And when the princes of Pharaoh saw her, they praised her to Pharaoh. And the woman was taken into Pharaoh's house, and for her sake, verse 16, and for her sake he dealt well with Abram, and he had sheep and oxen and male donkeys, male servants, female donkeys, and camels. And so most scholars believe this right here is where Hagar begins to be part of this story with Abraham. And oddly enough, it's at this terrible time when Abraham looks at his wife and is like, hey, you're super good looking. When we go to this land, they're probably going to kill me and take you, unless you say you're my sister. Probably not something you want to say to your wives, not something you want to say. Maybe just leave it at, you're beautiful, and then stop talking. That's usually safe. That's what I do. And so he says that. He says, you're beautiful. They're going to kill me and take you. And he's like, why don't you say you're my sister? And so what happens is Pharaoh sees her, and he's like, yeah, she's beautiful. And so he's like, I should marry her. So he takes her to be his wife. And Abram, this is his wife. And Abraham knew this was going to happen. And so there's this weird exchange that happens where Sarah is given to the Pharaoh of Egypt, and then Abram gets all of these things that it listed. It says donkeys and oxen and sheep and servants. And so this is where we meet Hagar. Can you imagine being this person? She's a slave, and she is traded along with some sheep and oxen to another person for a different girl. That sound good to you? That sounds terrible. She's a throw-in. They're like, yeah, here's some sheep and some oxen, and yeah, you can have Hagar. You can take her. That's super romantic. Not how you want to start things off, right? And so Hagar, she joins them. And so God clears that all up, and Abraham's able to get Sarah back. God speaks to Pharaoh and explains the situation. And so, but that's where Hagar joins Abram. What a weird start to the story. But remember God's promise, Genesis 12:3. He said, in you all the families of the earth shall be blessed. Now, does that include Hagar? It does, doesn't it? All is everybody. Do you think Hagar is feeling that blessing right now? She just got traded with some sheep and some oxen for a different girl. And then after Pharaoh realizes that he did something wrong, he gives Sarah back and doesn't even ask for her back. How would you feel? You ever feel that way? You kind of feel like you've been used? Hagar would have. It's like, I mean nothing to anybody. They just gave me away for nothing. They said, keep her. We don't need her. And that's the beginning of Hagar. And so she doesn't feel this. You know, we have a similar promise for us. Romans 8:28, and we know that all things work together for good to them that love God, to those who are called according to his purpose. But we don't always feel that way, do we? I know I don't. I know there are times in my life when things happen and I go, this doesn't seem good, God. I don't feel blessed. This doesn't seem right. You said, where is it? What are you doing here? And we don't really understand what's going on. I'm sure that she felt trapped. She was just given away for free. And now she belongs to this stranger, this foreigner who she's never met before, who just so happens to serve a God she's never heard of. And now she belongs to him? Sometimes we feel trapped in the situations that we're in. We feel stuck. We feel like we can't get out of them. But what we have to recognize is that God is always working, a lot like the song we sang. Even when we don't see it, even when we don't feel it, God is at work. Because the interesting thing is when God made that promise to Abram, Hagar didn't know about it. When God said to Abram, all the world will be blessed through you, Hagar didn't know that promise happened. And so even when we don't know what God is doing, he's already setting it up to benefit us in some way. Isn't that crazy? She had no idea. But that promise is also true for her, even though she didn't know about it. I thought that was amazing. Genesis 16, 1-6 says, Now Sarai, Abram's wife, had borne him no children. Here's the continued problem. She had a female Egyptian servant whose name was Hagar, the girl who had been thrown in. And Sarah said to Abram, Behold now, the Lord has prevented me from bearing children. Go in to my servant, and it may be that I shall obtain children by her. And Abram listened to the voice of Sarah. So after Abram had lived 10 years in the land of Canaan, Sarah, Abram's wife, took Hagar, the Egyptian, her servant, and gave her to Abram, her husband, as a wife. And he went into Hagar, and she conceived. And when she saw that she had conceived, she looked with contempt on her mistress. And Sarai said to Abram, May the wrong done to me be on you. I gave my servant to your embrace. And when she saw that she had conceived, she looked on me with contempt. May the Lord judge between you and me. But Abram said to Sarah, Behold, your servant is in your power. Do to her as you please. And then Sarah dealt harshly with her, and she fled from her. Things got worse for Hagar, didn't it? I mean, imagine this is you. I mean, Hagar, she's a servant to Sarah. Sarah comes to her and she's like, by the way, you're going to marry my husband. I'm going to what? Yeah, you're going to marry my husband. And the way it was set up, she was setting it up so that when Hagar had a child, she would have to give that child to Sarah. Can you imagine how she would have felt? How betrayed would she have felt? I mean, this is Sarah, who she's now been a servant of for a while, probably sometimes a little bit less than 9 years, somewhere around there, okay? She's been serving Sarah for somewhere around 9 years, and all of a sudden she's betrayed by her in such a way where she goes, not only do you belong to someone else, but now I'm forcing you to marry someone. You're going to have his kid, and when you do, that kid's going to be mine. Talk about being betrayed by someone. Talk about being used. How would you feel? You'd feel like nothing. You'd feel like nothing. And so she's let down by Abram and Sarah, and then she's let down by her circumstances. Because when you hear this story, you're probably thinking, that seems weird. That seems real weird. But it was actually something that they actually did back then. It was an actual contract that they could have. It was a normal thing for this to happen, for the woman who wasn't able to have kids to use her servant to have a child. And then if the man had that child and he said to them, you are my son, then that son would become the rightful heir. That son would become the rightful heir. And so that was a normal thing. And so her circumstances have made it so where even society's rules were against her. Everything was against her. The people she trusted was against her. She was born a slave. Now she's a slave to a different person. Now she's a wife, but not really a real wife. Just a wife to be used by someone else. And society says it's all okay. You ever have something happen to you and it seems like no one gets that it's wrong? Maybe it's something that no one knows about. So you've been carrying it, and so no one knows that it happened to you. So they don't understand that it's wrong. So you walk around on this earth with something that you have that has happened to you, that has cut you deeply, that no one else knows about. And so you feel alone in it. You feel betrayed. You feel let down, even by the very life that you're living. It's easy for that to happen. And it happens here for Hagar. Maybe for you it's something different. Maybe it's a relationship issue, or it's financial issues, or you have a health issue that you can't do anything about, or someone you love has a health issue that you can't do anything about. And so you feel betrayed by the circumstances of life. Not only do people betrayed you, but you feel life itself has let you down. You know, a lot of people feel that way right now. As they continue to do studies of the effect of COVID-19 on people, we've seen alcohol abuse rise, skyrocket. We've seen suicide hotline phone calls skyrocket. We've seen opioid addiction skyrocket. All of these things are happening because people are experiencing things and they're not able to have anyone that they feel is able to help them. So they're looking around and they're saying, there's no hope. There's no hope. And so they're looking around for an answer. They feel betrayed by the people they know. And they don't know that there's a God who always stands up for the hurting. Not only that, but Hagar was let down by the religious people. Because think about it, Hagar's an Egyptian. She doesn't serve this God they're talking about. So her introduction here to her master, these people that claim to love and serve the Lord God, is that it's okay that she's used. You know, I think there's a lot of people, even people here, that have been hurt by Christians and by religious things, by rules, by set up circumstances where we feel they say they love God. How could they do this to me? You ever have that happen? And when it's a Christian and it happens to you, you feel 10 times worse because you're like, they should know. Wait, why would they do this? And so I think Hagar, she's looking at them and she's going, what kind of people are these? They claim to be religious. They claim to love God. They claim to be Christians. That's what people can say about us sometimes. And for many of you sitting here in your cars today, that's happened to you. And what does it do? You know what I've seen it do? I've talked to so many people that have been so hurt by Christians, by Christianity, and by religion that when you start to talk about God, they go, I don't want to hear about that. No, I don't want to hear about that. No, I know people like that. They're no different. In fact, maybe they're worse. And so she's been let down by everything, and now even the religious people. But I want to remind you something, that yes, there will be Christians that let you down. There were people. There'll be pastors that'll let you down. Maybe you're looking at me and you're going, Ben, in some ways you've let me down. I'm not perfect. I can't be there for everything. I know that. But you know, God never does. He never lets you down. Even when Christians have let you down, even religion has let you down, even when rules and regulations have let you down, there's someone who goes, hey, what about me? Never let you down before, and I'm not going to start now. And his name is Jesus, and we're going to see him show up. Chapter 16, verses 6 through 7. It says, but Abram said to Sarah, she's in your power, do as you please. And it says, Sarah dealt harshly with her, and she fled. So Hagar's like, I'm out. I can't stand this anymore. I can't deal with this anymore. I'm out of here. And she runs away. You ever just wanted out? Circumstances you're in, you're like, I can't handle this. It's too much. I don't want this anymore. I've dealt with it for too long. I can't. I don't want it. I think a lot of us has felt that way. And the amazing thing is, verse 7, it says, the angel of the Lord found her by a spring of water in the wilderness, the spring on the way to shore. And so if you're checking that out and you're thinking, what does that mean? She was running back to Egypt. And I think that's important because a lot of times when we feel Christians have let us down, we feel God has let us down, we feel people have let us down, what we do is we run back to what was familiar. These are the things I used to do. Let's go back to those. Maybe I'll find satisfaction in those. Maybe I'll run back. I think we do the same thing. And on her way back to find satisfaction, it says God shows up. The angel of the Lord shows up. And it says he found her. I think that's awesome. Because so many of you, maybe you're on the verge of giving up. You're on the verge of going back to things that aren't God. Because Christians have hurt you, or churches hurt you, or someone you loved and trusted has hurt you. And so now you project that image onto God. And so you're thinking, maybe I'm done with this. Maybe this isn't going to work. And you're tempted to go back. But the amazing thing is when you turn around, you recognize God's been right there the whole time. And it's not him that's let you down. It's broken people. Because we're all broken. And so she gets something of her own. She gets a special promise. She gets this promise that God sees you. Genesis 16:13 says, so she called the name of the Lord who spoke to her. And she says, you are a God of seeing. For she said, truly here I have seen him who looks after me. And so I want you to get this. If you're writing down anything at all, write this one thing down. Your suffering has God's attention. Your suffering has God's attention. Your suffering has God's attention. In the middle of all of this, she says, I recognize now that in the moment I needed him the most, when things were the worst, I've been used by people. I've been used by those that I trust. I've been used by religious people. I've been used up, and I'm done with it. And God says, wait a second. I see you. And she says, now I understand that I am seen. And so when you are suffering and when you're walking through a time of pain, you have God's attention. You have God's attention. And so sometimes I think we need to be reminded of the promises that we have. Because what happens is Sarah, she comes back, Hagar comes back. She gives birth to Ishmael, that's his name. And years later, somewhere around 16 years later, Sarah gives birth to Isaac, her own son. And so now Sarah sees Hagar and Ishmael, and at a celebration for Isaac, Sarah's own birth son, she sees Ishmael laughing, and she says to Abraham, I want him gone. I'm done with him. We have Isaac now. We don't need him. Send them out of here. And so what happens? It says it broke Abram's heart, but what he does is he gives her some water and some food, and he sends Hagar away. And so think about this girl's life. She was a slave girl in Egypt. She's given away for free to a foreigner. All of a sudden, she's supposed to marry him. She gives birth to a son, but the legal rights of that son aren't hers. They're given to Sarah. So she carries a child for 9 months. She goes through the birthing process, and she doesn't even get to call that kid hers. And now that they have their own, they want to kick her and her son out? With nothing? That's what she's gone through. In Genesis 21, verses 15, starting there, it said, when the water in the skin was gone, so he gave her a canteen with water, and it's gone, she put the child under one of the bushes. Then she went and sat down opposite him a good way off, about the distance of a bow shot. For she said, let me not look on the death of the child. So she's given up. She's given up. She remembers that God sees her, but she's looking at the situation she's in and she's going, he might see me, but this isn't working out great. I'm in trouble. So she puts her son over there and she goes the opposite direction because she says, I can't watch him die. I can't watch him die. Verse 17, and God heard the voice of the boy, and the angel of God called to Hagar from heaven and said to her, what troubles you, Hagar? Fear not, for God has heard the voice of the boy where he is. Up, lift up the boy and hold him fast with your hand, for I will make him into a great nation. She's walking through the same problem she had before. Remember, she had to struggle with Sarah before, and so she ran away, and God said, go back, go back. And now she's having another fight with Sarah. This time she gets kicked out, and God shows up again. Some of you need to be reminded, because some of you have things in your past that you thought you dealt with that have crept back up, and you're not sure if you're going to win this time. At the time, you thought it was dealt with. You thought it was over. You thought that pain, that scarring was gone. But it comes back. And so some of you right now are dealing with things you've already dealt with before, but it's just been brought back to the surface. And like Hagar, we need a reminder. We need a reminder. Look what it says, verse 19. It says, then God opened her eyes, and she saw a well of water. And she went and filled the skin with water, and gave the boy a drink. And God was with the boy, and he grew up. He lived in the wilderness and became an expert with the bow. He lived in the wilderness of Paran, and his mother took a wife from him from the land of Egypt. I think this is so interesting because there's so many details in the Bible. And then all of a sudden, God shows up to a somewhere around 16-year-old boy who thinks he's dying, and his mother. And God says, open your eyes. And then it says she gets water. And then it fast forwards in 1 verse 2, and he's married and he's a great hunter. Wait, what? What about all the details? You know what's great about this? It's a reminder the details are in his hand. The details are in his hand. They didn't have to do anything. He just says, open your eyes. And it was there all along. God never leaves you. He never leaves you by yourself. People will let you down. Your circumstances will let you down. Society, Christians, religion, rules and regulations, they'll all let you down. But Jesus never will.
Amen.
One last thing in conclusion. Acts 7, 55 through 60. Acts 7, 55 through 60. It's talking about Stephen. Now, Stephen, he's a Christian. We're fast forwarding. He's a Christian in time of Roman rule. And there is Pharisees and Sadducees that hate Christianity. And he's on trial. And the case determines whether he lives or whether he dies. And Stephen goes before these people and he preaches the death, burial, and resurrection of Jesus Christ. And so he's talking to them and he's saying, listen, I know you don't believe me. He's saying, but there is a God who came down from earth, who lived a perfect and sinless life, who was crucified. And 3 days later, he came back from the dead because he wants to offer heaven to you. And they said, let's kill him. And look what happens. Verse 55, Acts chapter 7. But he, full of the Holy Spirit, gazed into heaven and saw the glory of God and Jesus standing at the right hand of God. And he said, behold, I see the heavens open and the Son of Man standing at the right hand of God. But they cried out with a loud voice and stopped their ears and rushed at him. Then they cast him out of the city and stoned him. Stephen's under trial. He's about to die. And he says, I see Jesus standing at the right hand of God. Now, normally, when it references Jesus at the right hand of God, he's seated. And Stephen says, I see him and he's standing. And people argue over, what does that mean? Why is he standing here, but everywhere else he's sitting? I think Jesus was standing up because he wanted Stephen to know, I know what this is like. I see you. You're still not alone. Because Jesus knows a lot about suffering, doesn't he? On that cross where he died, it says his Father turns his face away. And he suffers and he dies for you and for me. He gives up his life. And so when he sees the suffering of someone who loves him, it says that he stands up. And that should be a great comfort for all of us. Because when we walk through the worst that this life has, we have the attention of God. We see that in Hagar. He always shows up when we need him the most. And then we see it in Stephen after Jesus has died and he's been risen. It says that he's looking down and he sees somebody who loves him going through the worst trial, about to lose his life. And in response to it, seated in the heavens, he stands up. And so when we feel alone and we feel broken and we feel like we're suffering and no one sees us and we can't take anymore and we don't know what to do and we just want it to be gone, Scripture is clear. God stands up. You have his attention. And he's saying, I know suffering too. I know what it's like. And so when we walk through this, I just want you to know that you're not alone. You're not by yourself. The things that you're dealing with that you know, you don't think anyone knows, God sees it. You feel desperately alone. You've looked to your left and to your right, and no one's shown up to help. God is there. You wonder what's going to make sense of your life. You wonder about the details. And he's like, look at Ishmael and Hagar. I took care of the details. And for Stephen, he's at the end of his life. He's about to be killed for his faith in Jesus. And the God of the universe stands up. I think it's important for us to remember when we feel the farthest from God, maybe it's just because he's standing up to get a better view. He's letting you know, I know what it's like, and I've dealt with that. Last verse, Romans 8:18. For I consider that the sufferings of this present time are not worth comparing with the glory that is to be revealed in us. You know who wrote this? This is Paul who wrote this. You know what Paul was doing while Stephen was getting killed, while Jesus was standing? He was holding the coats for the people that were murdering Stephen, because he didn't know Jesus at the time. And years later, he's come to Jesus now, and he says, the suffering of this time are nothing compared to the glory that's for us in heaven. I wonder if he didn't think back to Stephen. If he didn't think back to all the people that he, as Saul, had persecuted, had put in prison, had killed, had broken their families up. And he says, as he writes this, I wonder, I can't help but think that tears are falling from his eyes. And he goes, the suffering of this time. And maybe he even wanted to put in that I caused for so many are nothing compared to heaven. And so we should all be encouraged that Paul, who ends up giving his life for Jesus himself, just like Stephen and just like Hagar, all three of them, at the worst times of their life, Jesus shows up. And so as we walk through this period with coronavirus, as we deal with things inside of us that people may not know about, because I think everyone carries scars inside that people don't see. God sees you, just like Hagar said, he's the God who sees. And just like Stephen says, and God stands, because your suffering has gotten the attention of God. You are not alone. Let's pray. Father God, we thank you so much for who you are. We thank you that you never leave us by ourselves. We thank you that you've proven yourself over and over and over through thousands of years, God. You have proven yourselves to mankind. That when we need you, you are right there. That when we begin to run in the opposite direction, we run into you because you've been there the whole time. And so, God, for those that here that are hurting, that are walking through suffering, help them to see that they're not alone. Help them to recognize that they are deeply loved, and help them know that they serve a God who knows a lot about suffering himself. We thank you. In Jesus' name, amen.
Draw me close to you. Never let me go. I lay it all down again to hear you say that I'm your friend. You are my desire. No one else will do. Nothing else can take your place. To feel the warmth of your embrace. Help me find a way. Bring me back to you. You're all I want. You're all I've
Father God, we thank you that you are always close to us. When we feel far from you, you are so close, God. We thank you that you love us. We thank you that you see us. We thank you that you stand for us. That in the moments of our worst suffering, you are there with us. Thank you for setting that great example, for being a great God, for being a God who sees the hurting, for being a God who steps in and stands up for those who are broken. We love you. In Jesus' name, amen.